I'm seeking Zion, I'm seeking truth, I'm searching for the way to find my place with you. I want the promise, I want the call, to know my purpose here, to give to you my all.
Yeah, hey, I got another one. Hey, there is a traveling salesman. You guys want to hear this? Well, I don't know, it's a short story. We're storytellers, and I got a lot of stories. So before I introduce them while you're sitting down, there is a traveling salesman who carried every single thing that would cure whatever ailed you. If you were up, he had high papillorum that would bring you down. And if you were down, he had low papahiram that would bring you up. Now, a curious observer said, this is like magic. You know, how did you come up with this? And the guy says, that's the magic of it. It all comes from the papum tree. Yeah, I make high papillorum by skinning the bark from the top of the tree down. And I make low papahiram by skinning the bark from the roots up. Yeah. And that's the only difference between the systems you find yourself in today. While one's trying to skin you from the ear down, the other's trying to skin you from the ankle up. True story.
Yeah.
Take your nonsense somewhere else. Okay, so I do want to introduce our next speakers. We're going to be starting off with an elder who is dear to my heart. One of my principal elders, his name was Tom Bestow. I met him back in the early 90s during a random crossing of paths, which we know are not random and there are no coincidences, where I turned left on a beach and ran into a group of people standing on the beach. And I said, I'm an Indian too. And there were a ton of Indians there. And I met this man who never let me go until he passed away last July. And one of his close friends who took that life journey with him is Algonquin Anishinaabe Midu elder Ojibwe. Did I say it right? Face in the rock. Solomon Owate. And he is from the Makwa Dudem, which is the Bear Clan. And he is currently living at the Gittiganzibi First Nation, and he is the keeper of a lot of sacred teachings. And one of these is the Pike teaching. And he continues the great legacy of Grand Chief William Commanda Morningstar in sharing the Seven Fires prophecy so that we remember who we are, where we're going, and why what we do today really matters. Also with him is a relation, Vimisiwain Ginu Wawate Jane Nikita. She is from, and I hope you forgive me, Nikita, if I said that wrong. She is from the Ma'ingan Dudem, or the Wolf Clan, and she is with the Algonquin of the Barrier Lake. She also carries sacred things such as paddles, these sacred paddles that are a part of a sacred story that involves the great peacemaker. And she carries one of these paddles that was gifted to her through also Grand Chief Ojibwe Morningstar William Commanda, the former Grand Chief of the North American Indian Nation from 1956 to 2011, who was also the keeper of the sacred wampum belts, which still are retained by the Algonquin people today, and I'll talk a little bit about that in my talk later. And so these are two sacred people in our family, and I'm grateful for them to be here to talk today. So I will, if we could give them a warm welcome. So what you see on the screen here is the fish are sacred. And the fish have a lot to teach us. And so these are the bones of the pike. And Elder Bowati, I'd like to welcome you to go ahead and share what you have to say and transition it over to Nikita. But I did want to tell you, I love you, man. And thanks for coming on.
All right. Can you hear me?
Oh, yes.
Okay. In the beginning, I thought those were stories, legends, like the meaning of legends in English. But turns out they're real stories of creation. So, what our laws are written in nature. So, our great law was written in the head of the pike. You see the top one in the middle?
Yeah.
That's a place of worship, which we call the sweat lodge. On both sides of the sweat lodge, you have two words. One is a crow, the other one is a seagull. Night and day, shadow and light. And that became our judicial system. Then below the sweat lodge is a fire. A belief system. We believe in the Creator, but it goes all for those believers of Allah and God and Jesus Christ and Buddha. On the side, on the right side, is a scraper. You scraper to recycle things. Work letters, stuff like that. And then in the middle, looks like a butterfly. The butterfly represents your freedom. And beside the butterfly, there's a staff. The staff represents our principles. On both sides, you have two knives. One is education, and the other one is freedom of choice. To cut the question. Down below, you have the bow and arrow, which allows you to build shelter and the things you need On the far left, at the bottom, you have your axis. With permission to construct anything you need. The bow is, I'm gonna correct this, the bow is the permission to feed your family, your village, your nation. And the far right, the bottom, is men and women for prosperity. Beside the men and the women, you have the fight so you can find peace. And you see that canoe? It represents your body. You serve in the way you want to serve. Down below, you see things that are sticking out. Like the trees and the environment. The hole in the middle is the river of life. So that all belongs to you, a human being. That's where we get our great law. Make good. Thank you.
I guess it's my turn to go. I'll reintroduce myself. Wekinawik, Bimasewan Gino, Dijna Kaznan, Wagin Godem. Hi, everybody. My name is Nikita Wawate. Wawate meaning Northern Lights. So that's what me and Saul's last name means. And thank you for having me. And I'll jump right into the Seven Fires prophecy. So the seven prophets came to Anishinaabe. They came at the time when the people were living a full and peaceful life on the northeastern coast of North America. These prophets left the people with 7 predictions of what the future would bring. Each of the prophecies was called a fire, and each fire referred to a particular era of time and would come in the future. Thus, the teaching of the 7 prophets are now the 7 fires. The first prophet said to the people, "In the time of the first fire, the Anishinaabe nation will rise up and follow the sacred shell of the Midegah Lodge. The Midegah Lodge will serve as a rallying point for the people, and its traditional ways will be the source of much strength. The sacred Migas will lead the way to the chosen ground of the Anishinaabe. You are to look for a turtle-shaped island, and this linked to the purification of the earth. You will find such an island at the beginning and end of your journey. There will be 7 stopping places along the way. You will know the chosen ground as has been reached when you come to a land where food grows on water. If you do not move, you will be destroyed." The second prophet told the people, You will know the second fire because at this time the nation will be camped by a large body of water. And this time the direction of the sacred shell will be lost. The Midegah will diminish in strength. A boy will be born to point the way back to the traditional ways. He will know the direction of the stepping stones to the future of the Anishinaabe people. The third prophet said to the people, in the third fire, the Anishinaabe will find a path to their chosen ground, a land in the west to which they must move their families. This will be the land where food grows on water. The fourth fire was originally given to the people by two prophets. They come as one. They told of the coming of the light-skinned race. One of the prophets said, "You will know the future of our people by the face the light-skinned race wears. If they come wearing the face of brotherhood, then there will come a time of wonderful change for generations to come. They will bring new knowledge and articles that can be joined with the knowledge of this country. In this way, the two nations will join to make a mighty nation. This new nation will be joined by two more, so that four will form the mightiest nation of all. You will know the face of the brotherhood if the light-skinned race comes carrying no weapons, if they come bearing only their knowledge and a handshake." The other prophet said, "Beware if the light-skinned race comes wearing the face of death. You must be careful because the face of the brotherhood and the face of death will look very much alike. If they come carrying a weapon, beware. If they come in suffering, they could fool you. Their hearts may be filled with greed for the riches of the land. If they are indeed your brothers, let them prove it. Do not accept them in total trust. You shall know that the face they wear is one of death. If the river runs with poison and the fish become unfit to eat, you shall know them by these many things." The fifth prophet said, "In time of the fifth fire, there will come a time of great struggle with grip the lives of all native people. All the warning of this fire there will come among the people who holds a promise of great joy and salvation. If people accept this promise of a new way and abandon the old teachings, then the struggle of the fifth fire will be with the peoples for many generations. The promise that comes will prove to be a false promise. All those who accept this promise will cause the near destruction of people." The prophet of the sixth fire said, "In the time of the sixth fire, it will be evident that the promise of the fifth fire came in a false way. Those deceived by this promise will take their children away from the teachings of the elders. Grandsons and granddaughters will turn against the elders. In this way, the elders will lose their reason for living. They will lose their purpose in life. At this time, a new sickness will come among the people. The balance of many people will be disturbed. The cup of life will almost be spilt. The cup of life will almost become the cup of grief." At the time of these predictions, many people scoffed at prophets. They then had medicines to keep away sickness. They were then healthy and happy as a people. These were the people who chose to stay behind in the great migration of Anishinaabe. These people were the first to have contact with the light-skinned race. They would suffer the most. When the fifth fire came to pass, a great struggle did indeed grip the life of all native people. The light-skinned race launched a military attack on the Indian people throughout the country, aimed at taking away their land and their independence as a free and sovereign people. It is now felt that the false promise that came at the end of the fifth fire was the materials and riches embodied in the way of life of the light-skinned race. Those who abandoned the ancient ways and accepted this new promise were a big factor in causing the near destruction of the native people of this land. When the fifth fire came to be, the words of the prophet rang true as children were taken away from the teachings of the elders. The boarding school era of civilizing Indian children had begun. The Indian language and the religion were also taken from the children. The people started dying at an early age. They had lost their will to live and their purpose in living. In the confusing time of the sixth fire, it is said that a group of visionaries came among the Anishinaabe. They gathered all the priests of the Midegah Lodge. They told the priests that the Midegah way was in danger of being destroyed. They gathered all the sacred bundles. They gathered all the scrolls that were recorded the ceremonies. All these things were placed in a hollowed out log in the ironwood tree. Men were lowered over the cliffs by long ropes. They dug a hole in the cliff and buried the log where no one could find it. Thus the teaching of the elders were hidden out of sight, but not out of memory. It was said that when the time came that the Indian people could practice their religion without fear, that a little boy would dream where the ironwood log full of sacred bundles and scrolls were buried. He would lead his people to the place. The seventh prophet that came to the people long ago was said to be different from the other prophets. He was young and had a strange light in his eye. He said, "In the time of the seventh fire, new people will emerge. They will retrace their steps to find what was left by the trail. Their steps will take them to the elders who they will ask to guide them on their journey. But many of the elders will have fallen asleep. They will awaken to this new time with nothing to offer. Some of the elders will be silent out of fear. Some of the elders will be silent because no one will ask anything of them. The people will have to be careful on how they approach the elders. The task of the new people will not be easy. If the new people will remain strong in their quest, the water drum of the Midegah Lodge will again sound its voice. There will be a rebirth of the Anishinaabe nation and a kindling of the old flames. The sacred fire will again be lit. In this time, that the light-skinned race will be given a choice between two roads. If they choose the right road, then the seventh fire will light the eighth fire and final fire. An eternal fire of peace, love, brotherhood, and sisterhood. If the light-skinned race makes the wrong choice of the roads, then the destruction which they brought with them is coming to this country and will come back at them and cause them suffering and death to all the earth's people. Traditional Midegah people of Ojibwe and people from other nations have interpreted the two roads that face the light-skinned race as the road to technology and the other road to spiritualism. They feel that the road to technology represents a continuation of headlong rush to technological, sorry, I can't say the word, development. This is the road that has led to modern society, to a damaged and sacred earth. Could it be that the road to technology represents a rush to destruction? The road to spirituality represents the slower path that the traditional native people have traveled and are now seeking again. The earth is not scarce on this trail. The grass is still growing here. The prophets of the fourth fire spoke at one time when two nations will join to make a mighty nation. He was speaking of the coming of the light-skinned race and the face of brotherhood that the light-skinned brother could be wearing. It is obvious from the history of this country that this was not the face worn by the light-skinned race as a whole. That mighty nation spoken of in the fourth fire has never been formed. If the natural people of the earth could just wear the face of brotherhood, we might be able to deliver our society from the road to destruction. Could we make the two roads that today represents two clashing world views come together to form a mighty nation? Could a nation be formed that is guided by respect for all living things? Are we the new people of the seventh fire? Miigwech.
Good job.
Good job, Nikita. So, Brian, where are you at? I would never take a bite out of this apple. The Apple computers are my bank. Can you come show me how to bring them both up? How did he do this? Hold on, Nikita. We're trying to bring Saul back up. Right now, everybody's watching you.
Oh,
Okay, you know what to do.
Nikita is very pretty.
Nikita is with child. And pretty powerful little lady. She's giving her head right now. And so, just so you are aware, when you see maps, they are propaganda. That within the map of Europe, which is very small in comparison to North America, every little spot is detailed and shown, even Monaco. The importance that these people and their families are given and their identity in a world that wants to tell you about identity. There are nations larger than European nations within the continental boundaries of the United States and Canada. And one of them are the nations that they live on in Quebec, which are not under any treaty with Canada or the Crown of England or any nation whatsoever in the world. And I would encourage you to take the time to go there and discover these people in a way that's equally kind and loving as you do and respectful as you do when you go to nations of Europe. And so I have, having been there and blessed to lay in the water there, it's clean. I can say that all is not lost. And I just want to thank you too for continuing the fight. So let's give them a round of applause. Anything you want to close with, Elder Saul? Okay. Hey, I'll be in touch with you, okay? I'll be heading up there soon.
Okay.
All right, love you guys.
Yeah.
Miigwech for having us.
Miigwech is thank you, but it's from the heart. Miigwech. Hey, Miigwech. Yeah, aho. If you know one word, hey, you made it. I'll give you a citizenship right now. All right, guys, take care.
Bye.
Okay, so we are now ahead of schedule. Who needs a break? Nobody wants a break. Today, what we're gonna do is swap out this apple with a non-apple. Okay, hold on one second.
What is the central city where they live?
Maniwaki, Maniwaki. It was originally a trading post that was established by the Europeans along a trading river that they would travel north on to Hudson Bay. And they then took, and we'll talk a little bit about the Lake of Two Mountains. It's the mouth of the, I should probably wait till I have the thing on my, what is this?
That's your new thing.
My new thing?
We're charging the old thing.
Okay.
It's probably important that they know that, you see, they were going to be here in person.
Yeah, they're actually coming in person. And I did want you to notice, like, there's two Midegah. It's a whole nother topic for another time. But don't forget, Melchizedek came rocking into Jerusalem, and he wasn't a descendant of Abraham. He wasn't from Jacob, and yet Melchizedek had a priesthood. I was in the Marine Corps. When I was in Afghanistan, I ran into people from the Air Force, ran into people from the Navy and from the Army, and each of them carried the same source of their authority, and each of them had a different responsibility they were accountable to. So he's currently right now one of the two principal elders, the Gichi Aya'a, which means great being, because they are a reflection, like the moon reflects the sun's light, living their life with every breath between their hearts as a sacred ceremony. And he was going to come here, and I hope you noticed that he talked and mentioned Jesus Christ. This is the peacemaker. We know all about him. We never had a chance to talk about him, because the boot went straight to the throat when the Jesuits heard out that we knew about him. It was against their little business model. So they were going to come, and then we had the most interesting thing happen, and that's that. He broke his shoulder. But he's okay. He'll make it. He had 3 strokes last year and wasn't supposed to talk anymore. And I told him about when I cut my tongue off, and they said, "You're not going to talk anymore." He's talking now just fine. Yeah. Well, I guess you're all here for this, so we'll start with something that helps calm me down, because I have a hard time sometimes, and if I get too excited, I will stutter. You are not going to hear that today. And if you do, don't say anything. Remember, hey, I was a brown belt in the Marine Corps martial arts program. You breaking more shoulders today? No, of course not. Okay, so I'm going to sit down. I'm going to be showing you a lot of stuff today and talking about a lot of stuff that's going to be a lot of stuff. Nothing. When I was a little kid, I had periods of time where I spent a lot of time away from human beings. And those who know me know I like to spend a lot of time away from human beings. But I'm glad to be with you human beings. And so one of the things I used to do was I would climb up into trees and I would feel the wind moving, and you were a part of something majestic. And I used to look down and if you stay there long enough, everything forgets that you're there. All the other beings and the lives and the families that got quiet when you entered, because they know every insect, every animal, every bird, every creature knows that you are a chief in creation the moment you walk there. You are a reflection of the Creator in that space, but have become a devil to their unborn generations. And I would watch the interaction of these different creatures that got along as if they were communing with each other in a council. I watched coyotes and deer walk side by side. I watched birds play with butterflies. And my grandmother asked me after they had found us, when we had a period of time, things weren't so good. And she reminded me about poetry, and she gave me a task to write about what it meant to me. Every struggle is an opportunity for growth. Everybody loves the fruit on the tree, but everybody blames the seed that falls, that reveals its true inner shell, and thinks it has nothing to offer when that flesh tears away. And some would even say, as it presses into the earth, out of sight, out of mind, maybe perhaps good riddance to that rubbish. But that's when the journey begins. You never know what seed is going to become what tree, but they all get there. I just figured, this is science. I just figured it out. Okay. When I was younger, I would climb high into the trees, my sight distant, traveling in all directions with the wind. I journeyed ever higher to escape the pain held within. I had this idea of a far-off place, of a family waiting, looking for me, arms open, a warm embrace. High I climbed, if only I could see. Further I stared from the solitude of those trees. There is a point when you become one with the rustling leaves, the gentle caressing breeze, the melodic birds who have a wisdom to impart, the sun's warmth that reaches deep into your heart. There is a harmony to knowing who you are, a strength to finding your place amidst the noise of the world. There is a peace you feel with the wind upon your face. When you are high up there upon the giants of the land, it is easier to see the steps another takes. It is easier to understand. The journey home does not always bring a cease to the scars left upon your soul, but the yearning seed persists in the pressures of the earth, and adversity helps you grow. I see my grandmothers and grandfathers, my unbroken lines, the veins of my blood stretching backwards into time. They are my roots so that I may grow high, and I am their purpose as they reach their hands high into the sky, calling for the Creator to hear their plea, calling upon the wind, 7 generations, don't forget about me. That's the poem. Okay, so, anin gininanana bojo, David Taylor, an Indigenous cause, video kichi ta'awanin in digo Ojibwe ong. A dig sanga ne do dam, minimukan and doon chiba. I said, hello, I see your spirits, and some of you I've spoken to, I saw it right in your eyes. And that's how we say hello, ani. It's the highest greeting. It has nothing to do with how you look or what you wear. We don't control, many of us, that. It's something more pure. I said, Gininanana bojo, it's a question, and from it comes buju, which is another way we say hello. And it's a reflection. Are you walking like the Creator here? That's our sacred responsibility. Every one of us are chiefs. My English name is David Taylor Barker, but the Ojibwe people call me the kind warrior man. I didn't ask for the name. I'm not a really kind person sometimes, but I think it's something to strive for continually in my ceremony, between my breath and my heartbeat. I'm from the standing firm reindeer family, which is the principal family of the deer clan, a very sacred clan. Some of the things I share with you, I'm grateful to even be a part of knowing, because the deer family, the deer, interacts with humanity, starting even with the first mother and father, the very first animal that greeted them when they entered into nature. That great creation who makes the trails for all animals to traverse dense nature, and that's love. Of all the deer, the caribou or the reindeer is the only one where both sexes wear antlers. And so we know that as a sacred message in creation that men and women stand side by side. the eagle feather. One sets the direction, and the other one has to do it. And we'll talk a little bit about that. I come from spirit water. Physically, my ancestors are buried, a lot of them, at Spirit Lake, North Dakota. But when I say Midegah and Ojibwe today, I mean the sacred spirit water of the womb, the first baptism we have into this earth, where when that happened, there was an expectation that there would be a plan or a way prepared for you so that you would not become lost and you could return from whence you came. But we know along the way that trail was broken, which brought the necessity for us to return into that sacred water, the water of Mother Earth, so that then we can be renewed and start again when we know the truth and the way that we should live. You would call this baptism. So when you get baptized, it's actually your second baptism. Something to reflect on deeply. I am a Chippewa chief, a traditional chief. Again, I didn't ask for that either. I have a father, I have uncles, I have a great uncle, and I had a grandmother. But in our culture, the grandmothers, they observe and they select the headman, tip of the spear, that would protect and safeguard. They had the best opportunity with this person to protect the strength of the mother. And the strength of the mother is in her unborn generations yet to come, being able to come. And so every breath I have from when that happened is to ensure that I talk about that. I also represent my family 2 treaties. One of them is called the 1789 Treaty of Fort Harmar. At that same negotiation with the continental United States that became a constitutional United States, they entered into their very first agreements, not with England and not with France and not any foreign power, but they came to the Haudenosaunee Iroquois, and they came to the Wyandot, and they came to the Nisui Mishkoti Winan, the 3 Fires people of the Great Lakes, who were established by 3 brothers who were taught the way from the great peacemaker. I'm very grateful today to bring the Nisui Mishkoti Winan stone here, the Council Fire rock of the 3 Fires people obtained in the Garden River Ojibwe Nation, just above the cave called Trap Rock, where we know the first mother and father were laying upon this continental land. And furthermore, later, when a village was buried within it that were hiding, as the entrance was collapsed and overhang to block its entrance, and they remain there today. I'm very thankful to restore through the loving kindness of the Whittier family, the Ojibwe pipe back to the bundle of our nation, and for it to be here as well. Each nation carries a bundle of sacred items that tell their story, and ours are here today. And I'm grateful to be a representative of that. So my teachers, just to establish where I come from and what I'm thinking, are not just amazing grandparents that I had, which were very amazing. This has got to go here. Bar with me. Here we go. So I have had a number of teachers in my life, and none were greater than my grandmothers. My grandfathers measured up too. But that's of their obedience to my grandmother's hearts. And remember that. The first elder I received was when I was a teenager, and I was at the Nez Perce Indian Reservation with some friends, Lacey Anderson. And I was taken to be initiated, and I met a man named James Great Walker. I don't know if you noticed, but Indians have really cool names. And he was called the Leaf, or Nudin on a Bush. He was born in 1937, and he was one of the very last elders to be taught by those that actually were taught prior to the forced assimilation and war that occurred in the 1850s and 60s. He was the chief Midegah of the West, and it was out of love for my grandmother, who admitted her failures, but she kept trying, and she sent him to teach me, which occurred all the way until he died in 2009. And he was from the Turtle Mountain Indian Reservation, and he would travel all over North America. And he had a lot of things that he could have taught me, but what he focused on was the things that would be important to this tree growing. And it mostly centered around the heart of the mother, knowing how greatly I struggled with my own. Also, at the exact same time, normally you get one teacher. I had two. I've heard up to 5. Wendy Phillips had 5, but I had 2. That was Thomas Michael DeStow. He was an Abenaki who, for most of his life, was told he was an Indian, and then in the 1950s, the United States government just said, well, we don't recognize them anymore. And all of a sudden, they're not Indians. And all of a sudden, everybody told him most of his life, oh, you're a pretendian. And then in 2011, something remarkable happened. Magic. He became an Indian again in one day when his tribe was re-recognized, because we know that the United States federal government apparently is God. So he is the keeper of the chief headdress of Grand Chief William Commanda, who we keep circling around, this great teacher of our people. Now, what you don't know is the backstory, and this is all important foundational information for you to hear as we go forward, because there are things coming forth that you have to know with a surety in this time that it's real. We do not live in the age where a man can walk out of a desert and say, God spoke to me and here's a word. We live in the age of the devil, who is going to tell you everything you believe is wrong. That will tell you, and I know that somebody said I shouldn't, but I will, that'll tell you that you're wrong to think that it's wrong for a baby to be murdered, but you are wrong to not let an injection go in your body. So these men were grateful. I'm grateful to have them in my life. William Commanda, I met him one time. It was on a beach in California, and it was so strange. He had had a conversation with people about a little boy coming. And then I ended up running into a bunch of people, and I was the only little boy there, and he took me to him, and he talked to me about my dad and things like that. Back in 1920, when the League of Nations was formed by Woodrow Wilson and Imperial Britain, the Indian nations of North America, over 200 of them gathered and said, we want to join too. And they called themselves the Indian League of Nations, and they were rejected by the veto of the United States and Great Britain. In 1944, after World War II was coming to an end, the United States declared that they would reform the League of Nations into the United Nations. And so, knowing that they were rejected as individual nations, even standing together, they said, then we'll speak as one voice, the North American Indian Nation. And over 400 nations gathered in Montreal from across North America. And they said, then we'll just request one chair in the building. And they selected Jules Sioe, a chief in the Algonquin peoples, and Bernard Commanda and William Commanda, because that family carried the sacred wampum belts of the Anishinaabe Algonquin nation. And we'll talk a little bit about that. The family still has them today. I've sat in their presence. And they requested again, can we just have one chair? But that wasn't the destiny of our people. Our destiny was to disappear. And so we were vetoed and rejected again. 1956, William Commanda was selected to be the head chief of all tribal nations in North America. So when they had discussions overseas, it was in the Queen wanted to speak with an Indian. It was William Commanda who went and walked in the palace of Buckingham. It was William Commanda who went to Rome. It was William Commanda who went to Tibet. William Commanda who represented us as the face of our people. And he continued to teach the Seven Fires prophecy his whole life because he knew and felt that we were really close. He didn't think negatively about Jesus Christ, but he understood the Jesus Christ that we met was not the Jesus Christ that you know. Just as somebody could show up at your house and say that they're your bank, and if you believed them and they took all your stuff, then you'd realize they're not your bank when your bank shows up. So the Jesus that they brought initially was not the Jesus that we knew, but the Jesus that the Latter-day Saints profess and speak of, and we see the fruits in their families, and the way their families are, and the love their communities have, is how we used to be. And we know that's the Jesus we were waiting for to come again. So what has happened? Just to get it out right at the beginning, before we go into some details. In 2024, all the scrolls and all the lodge teachings from the West Coast to the East Coast were aggregated 1 week ago in one location following a continental review. They were then taken to a place in Mississauga, north of Toronto, and all of them were given to one lodge. And the current keepers of the responsibility to teach, translate, and release these are Gichi Aya'a Moses Gode, Mark Phillips of the Turtle Clan, who carries the oldest teachings, Gichi Nokomis, Awido Kazit Megizi Dudem, Bald Eagle Clan, Wendy Phillips, who represents us with the nation of Canada, and just returned this month from Rome, where she met with the Pope, and other scrolls were shown that were taken by the Jesuits, the ones who decided that we had too much Bible and sought their destruction in the 1640s. And Ogima Midegah Ogichida of the Adi Dudem, dear Clem, because I don't stop, and persistence is the only thing that gets failure out of the way of your triumph. This December, on the 20th through 21st, there will be a winter solstice grand ceremony, a sacred unity event. It's to follow up with a March meeting that occurred there between all of the principal leadership of the Maya, Azteca, Amazona, Inca, and Palenque, Mexico, where they agreed to speak with one voice again and fulfill the Eagle Condor prophecy. And I'll be traveling there, as will Zion Media. They also possess records that will be ready for unification with those of North America. And if these people in universities don't like it, they better learn to love it, because those records contain languages from Southeast Asia as well as Africa, because we were a global trading network. No scrolls are to remain secret. No midu is to remain silent. These are important things for me to declare as a representative and Oshkabi's messenger of the Midday we win, the path of the heart, because up until about 30 years ago, you weren't allowed to talk about these things. We will reinstall the lodges in every Ojibwe tribal community. These will be teaching centers on unity and collaboration on the fullness of our history, which includes Judaic, Christian, and tribal histories as one, because we are one. These will be meeting points for the faiths to come and sit together around our fire in each region of North America. These will be locations where we will welcome the leadership of the Latter-day Saint Church to come and speak with us on what it is we have to offer in sustaining what it is they've been carrying forward. That a little boy in 1823 was able to remove from the earth, called the Book of Mormon, and then in 1830 was published for all to review. And many forget that in that very year, the United States government and Andrew Jackson, they formed under the War Department, the Bureau of Indian Affairs, which is still at war with us. And if you tell a child they're not the same as their parent, that is war. That they sought our destruction, and that 7 years was the worst 7 years of any period of the genocide, as all tribal peoples east of the Mississippi River were nearly eradicated in the hundreds and hundreds of thousands. And yet that man is still upon the $20 bill. The only equivalent today is if we saw Heinrich Himmler on the euro in Europe. How deeply hurtful must that salt be rubbed in the wound every day? Invitations are sent to all to come and learn, as these things are prepared to assist in instructing humanity with the fullness of the proper way to live the good life. They say you have to have 12 grades to live the good life, and then all of a sudden it becomes 16 grade levels, and then it becomes 18 grade levels to live the good life, because they got to shove more BS down your throat for you to believe that you're living a good life. Comedian. It's very simple to live the good life. To live the good life, you have to follow the path of the heart. The day we win. It's our language. Hey, don't get all wrapped up on it. Doesn't sound the same. You know?
We win.
I know. To the rabbis, they saw him as Yeshua ben Joseph. Right? Don't get caught up on the name. So when there was a tower that fell, the languages were changed. So the Midegah we win was established at the creation of man and woman as the way to live on the earth. We have a remnant remaining. What remains? We have a remnant of that, not all of that. But what we do have still is greater in volume than all of the sacred texts that you're carrying around today. Pretty nice remnant. It was reestablished after the flood by a little boy, approximately 2,500 years ago. We'll talk about that too. To the people who are now in the continent. And it was reaffirmed 2,000 years ago by the peacemaker who appeared to the Ojibwe people at the Great Lakes and who established peace amongst all nations in North, Central, and South America. And each of them carry his tale. And all of those stories will come forth, as well as those in other regions of the world. I had a discussion with the kings of the Maori. One of them is a stake president who said he carried great sorrow, that he carries a history of my people, but the history of his people has never been allowed to be received. And he, the great peacemaker, came to them too. The greatest celebrity in the history of the world will be known before he shows up as Jesus Christ, the great peacemaker. That's an applause-worthy statement. Now we're going to talk about some really strange things. And hey, I'm not a PowerPoint guy, but you're going to get death by PowerPoint today. So, you know, the star, the symbol that we carry, the Midegah we win star, is the symbol of our connection with the Creator, the higher authority. It's very remarkable that it's the exact same as the Melchizedek star. And this is something that was pointed out very directly by the sages of Israel who were interacting with us as we draw in the lodge, when we go to make the star lodge. And I was with Ojibwe up in the Algonquin as we had a star lodge. And you rest the sticks in a certain way, 2 sticks side by side in each direction, and it creates this symbol on the top. And there's a saying you say when you do it, that 2 sticks bound as one in all directions. I'm going to play a short video that will help you understand a little bit more when you talk about 2 sticks being joined together. Hey, where's Brian Nettles?
I don't know what to do except to put the USB in.
Is the USB in? Oh, it doesn't. How do I display this up there?
How about let's pull it out and put it back in?
Hey, we'll get there. I'm so glad you guys are so patient.
Try turning it on and off again.
There we go.
Okay. We're visual people and we got to see things. Are you going to play?
There you go.
It's okay. So we draw 2 sticks. This is how we lay the actual physical sticks when we make the lodge. And we have to do these 2 sticks that are bound as one in all directions. And when they overlap, they create 2 stars of David. And there's a story behind why that is. And we'll talk about that story. Now, as you see, something curious I did in a lodge. I was sitting in a lodge and I was in Ojibwe. I got to sit up in the front. And I thought, oh, I'm going to be bold. And when they were drawing how we were going to build it, they do it every time as if everybody doesn't know, because there's people there that don't know. I just took a stick and I colored in the middle. And I said, that's the Star of David. And they said, yeah, we know. And I said, why didn't you say anything? And they said, nobody ever asked. So, I mean, I guess there's a certain pride in omission, right? So what is the story and how do we have these things and when did we obtain these things? We're going to talk a little bit about that. We carry and teach of different periods. A period of a creator without a creation. You can't be a creator unless you make something. But there's a period before. We teach about a creation by the creator that is spiritual and physical. The beings assisting in the creation. And we're not talking about the plants and animals. And no, we're talking about the 6 different beings that are before us that assist the creator and that assist us. You'd call these angels, and not all angels are the same. You got seraphims and cherubims and tons of different levels. We talk also about those that are plants and animals and all levels of beings. The creation of spirit people, that's you and me. In the sky world, the spirit world, which it's all around us. And then into a physical world manifestation of life and people with a purpose. We understand periods of learning followed by destruction, such as the flood, when we don't do what we are supposed to do, which seems to happen a lot. We talk about a migration after a flood, and each of these peoples talk about this. The first story that Ojibwe shared, the chief elder of the Algonquin, the oldest people in North America. The first story they shared is, do you know how we got here? After the flood, we were all together for a long time, like 7 generations. That's about 210 years. Because we do a generation by natural law. So you look at the moon, and the moon takes like 29 days, 29 days between the moon. Well, we also looked at the mother, and she had a kid, not today's terms, but a child would go into puberty about 14 years old. And then under natural law, at about that time, about 28, they'd be having their child would be having a child as well. So it's when the fruit becomes another tree, capable of bearing children. And so we knew this was about 7 generations, and we tried to make a mountain, a big thing to try to go touch the Creator and be with the Creator, and it was too soon, and it was knocked down. And the languages were changed. And so we went in 4 directions. There were those that went into Africa, but we don't teach that story. We just know that's true because of the tribes we've met in Africa that are so similar to us, that have actually traded with those in Central America. There are those that call themselves the Muskogee. Actually, I'm going ahead of this. Let me slow down. The first 2 that came into North America after the flood were called the Algonquin and the Incan. That's what you call them. And they landed crossing the Atlantic in what you would call the St. Lawrence River. And the other ones landed in what you would call Peru, Chile. And then those in the north went south, and those in the south went north, and they filled the entire continent with life. They were then joined by the people called the Denetah. You would call those today the Navajo. the thieves, but they're not thieves. That's the Washington, D.C. name. And when we try to say, can we be called by our name? They say, well, you can't because it's called legal fiction. What's legal fiction? If we made a piece of paper that says we took something from you, for you to try to take it back, you have to use the name that we gave you when we took it from you. How rude. And so these peoples were met by the Denetah, who are currently at the Northern Lights in Northwest Territories. And I've stayed in the home of their Grand National Chiefs and their matriarchs and listened to their story and how they traveled north and south. They have their own history. They are the smallest groups in North America, the Inca and the Algonquin. Even today, not under the boot for a couple hundred years because they hid out in Quebec and hid out in the mountains. They still only number 11,000 Algonquin and a couple thousand Incan. How great was the destruction of the war that they wrought with each other? The entire Southwest and how it's a desert, they claim that they did that by cutting all of the forests down to make weapons of war. You would call these the Jaredites. After a period of time where the continent had settled, there's another period. And this is a period of migrations after the first temple destruction. We know these things to be true. No one's ever asked. There were two migrations that occurred that went different directions. The first, a manifest of one of their boats is recorded in Egypt, as well as in Ireland. And they arrived to the St. Lawrence River, where they then took a right in the wintertime onto the Ottawa River, what you would call the Lake of Two Mountains Bay, and their ship froze. And another migration, which was about 60 or 70 years later, when they finally reached the land, and these were those that went the other direction, through the Arabian Peninsula, through the Indian Ocean, through the West Indies, or East Indies, and across the Pacific Ocean. And they landed on the western side of the Yucatan. There were people there when they arrived. And so these people, they conquered. And then they headed north along the coastline. And they crossed an area called Texas and Louisiana. And they were crossing the Mississippi River, Mississippi. You've been saying an Ojibwe word your whole life, you never knew it. We don't know who is in these places. It's Mississippi River. That's the great Ojibwe River. Mississippi, that's our words. And they settled in the southeast. You would call these the Muskogee language family, where they split into 7 families. And they headed north up the Mississippi, where they then hit the Ohio River, which meets in a place called Missouri. And they ran into the Anishinaabe Algonquin. And they shared enough in common, they did not go to war with us, because we had the same history of coming from the same place. So we made a massive trading empire. The Muskogee peoples, you would know them as the Seminole, the Chickasaw, Choctaw, Alabama, and a couple other small tribes that are extinct today. The tribe is a branch of a family. People talk about Laman and Lemuel and Nephi and Samuel, and they had kids, Samuelites, Lamanites, right? But they're all Lehites. They're their father's sons. They just forgot to act like it. In the last year, the Muskogee nations have added their history onto their websites, and nobody batted an eye, where they said, yeah, we came across the Pacific Ocean from the Middle East, and we came up through the Yucatan up into Southeast Asia Southeast United States, what you call it now. And they were one people. From Mexico and Yucatan up to Georgia and Florida and Kentucky, just so you get a point of reference of location, these were one people. And they operated together as one people. And the wealthiest of those people were those that were in the islands between them as their trading route took them down their freeway, down the Mississippi River into the Gulf of Mexico, to the islands, and then to the Yucatan. And they traded back and forth faster than for you to drive your car from Paris to Madrid, Spain. Those on the islands, you would call the Azteca a branch of these people. The great peacemaker also spoke to them. And they're the ones, because of their wealth, that outnumbered everybody else. And when they came in from the islands generations after the peacemaker had left, they came first as proselyting and said, we know the way. What did he say? Your spirit is trapped within your body, and the way out is through your heart. Brother and sister, lay yourself on the altar while I remove it. And this started a continental war because they outnumbered everybody else. And that war reached all the way to the Algonquin Anishinaabe of the Great Lakes, where people were fleeing to the north, and all the way up to the Okanagan, where when I was with the Okanagan in British Columbia, another nation that is unceded, equal as France or Germany, that the reason the Okanagan didn't get conquered by them is because they just killed them all. When I was there, they took me up a river, up to a cave where water comes out of the mountain, and there were 2 pillars that they had made, and one of the pillars told this story, and the other pillar told the story of when the Spanish had reached there as well. They murdered all them too, and it had the cool, the little hats carved on the stone. And they remember these teachings in this history. And so, how does this relate to you? What you would call the Mulekites were those that had gone into the Great Lake region. And what you would call the Nephites were those that had gone into the Central American and Southeast United States region, where they had one nation that then had division. Which should not be shocking to you, because from what I hear, not all Americans are equal. You gotta pick a color. And a criminal. Pick one. I don't know. So, the ones that I can talk about are my family. And the ones that you will hear about from the southern regions will be from them. Currently, right now, the head Muskogean chief, Phil Lane Jr., he went on a journey to retrace the steps of our ancestors. And he went through the Pacific to the Maori. And I spoke with the Maori who met with him, and they called it the Lehi Nephite reunion, and yet nobody talked about it. He then went into Asia, and he went through Cambodia, meeting and following the trail of his ancestors, and they remembered, and the markings are there, even up into Tibet. We know who we are. So thanks for keeping that fire alive to remind us of who we are and how remarkable it is that that seed was planted within the very people that at the time it occurred in the 1820s on 5 continents was murdering and taking everything. And so great was our history that a young boy carried that a new people, that's you, chose to take upon yourselves the way we were as how you are. And they chose to live as the Indian, welcomed nowhere, migrating westward just as we did, accepting extermination orders, having their possessions taken, burned, their children, their fathers and mothers murdered. And they found themselves even in a desert in the Rocky Mountains, a place of refuge. Oh my goodness, a great body of water. Oh, it's salt. Irony. And yet they made it blossom as a rose at the same time. We were moved into deserts, and yet we have not been able to blossom equally. And a part of that has to do with the boot is still upon our necks. The mere fact that my boys who were born in North America are allowed to be called American and German, but not Ojibwe by the boss federal government. I'm a bundle keeper of the Ojibwe nation. My sons are Ojibwe too, as are my daughters. So what happened? I'm going to tell you a story. There was a boat that froze in water, and it looked a lot like those Phoenician boats. They actually covered the top of it with wood shell, and so it sat out there. It arrived in the winter season. They remained on the boat for a full moon cycle. They came off the boat and carried tokens showing knowledge of who we are. They carried 3 children and an elder. There were others with them that were not the same as them. And these are in our scroll writings. And we made them leave by filling their boat with tobacco. And then they left and returned from whence they came, which we know today, based upon visiting the locations, was a place called Turkey. They're the ones that brought them over.
What year?
This would have been about 600 BC. They reinstalled the Star Lodge in all communities and started the matrilineal bloodlines of the Deer family. We're talking about my family. And if it's not true, then when I take a DNA test, it should prove that it's not true. But we'll talk about that in a minute. Now, the boy that they brought was a super genius. We still revere him. We call him the little boy from the sun. Everything's symbolic. He reflected the Creator in his everyday life in a way that had been unseen. He was taught by the elder who was with him. And he went to all of our communities westward, and he put the Star Lodge in place so that we were aware and knew of the Creator's lodge that had been removed from the earth. And then he left with this elder, and to where they went, we do not know. They made an agreement, a treaty called the Nehiyawat, Blood Confederacy. Now, when the elder came off the boat after a full moon cycle of 28 days, like 29 days, the entire Lake of the Two Mountains, just west of Montreal, was surrounded by the Anishinaabe. They had made fires. It looked like a big fire circle. And we were going to kill them all. We thought they were invaders. They know what's going on here. Why aren't they coming off? And when they did come off, the elder came off holding a bag, a satchel. And from within it, he pulled out little antlers, and he put them on his head. And this was a sign to the people watching to go and grab the traders, those who make the trails, keep the trails, and communicate peace between nations. And so they brought the great deer chief who wore antlers too. And this is why they lived. And they were told, once they sat and they understood each other, about how the peoples that were there were remnants of those that had come after the flood. And they were integrated immediately into our communities. So this is my DNA test, a visual of it. And it's remarkable because my family was integrated in our stories and what's in our scrolls. We were running trading networks through North America, Central and South America. And yeah, I'm Incan, I'm Mayan, I'm Azteca, I'm Anishinaabe, I'm Sioux, I'm also Persian, I'm Aramaic Jew, the oldest Jew. Really remarkable, I'm also Fijian and Papua New Guinean. Now the remarkable thing about that is that due to my family being a part of signing all the initial treaties from the 1600s on, we have 9 generations of every Indian recorded, every name. I can speak 7 from memory. And because of my European side, who happen to be Smiths and Taylors and Millets, they like genealogy too, and they documented that whole side as well. Nowhere in that 9 generations are any Jews, any Fijians or Papua New Guineans, any Persians or any Incans or any Mayans or any Aztecas, and yet that's who I am. So we know these things are true even with your science, but I didn't need that to know it was true. I read the same books as you. So I list here that as well. It's pretty fascinating. And so I do feel that as I've lived my life, that I'm speaking with some semblance of authority on these things that are going to happen. But it's important that you know it's true. Now, some of the things that we're going to be releasing is a little bit more information about creation of the first mother and father. And I'm going to share just a short teaching on that, if it's okay. That when the first mother and father were formed in the flesh, it was upon, as we tell it and as it is recorded and taught, that they were formed from the red clay upon the eastern shore of this land. And that when they stood, they were looking separate directions. That the man was watching the sunset, and it was setting in the east, because in those days the world went the other direction. And when we shared that through the 1800s, they called us crazy and mad. And yet now they talk about how the world goes different directions every period of time. So how old is the history we carry? The first mother, the first thing she saw was not the sunset. She was watching the trees, looking the other way, the nature. She was fascinated by the color green. Because where they were prior, there were no colors. The colors are a part of this reality where we are today. And I'll talk about that a little bit as we go into the Ojibwe woman, or the womb we're within, and the veil that's cast upon our eyes from that great ball of fire in the sky, almost like a flaming sword. That they both noticed a trail and a deer, an animal looking at them from nature, the first creature that they saw. And so they knew that it was the one that was setting the way for them to go. They wouldn't have otherwise been able to enter creation. How dense and thick the forest must have been at that time. And they followed that great deer into nature, where they were stopped by a monadu. A monadu is a spirit helper. It's one of the 6 beings, 6 different types of beings created before mankind was here. You would call this an angel, who would inform them to look at each other. And for this reason, in our lodges, the men sit on one side and the women on the other, so that they can observe each other and their responsibility that they're accountable to. And the man was told that he was given strength and endurance to provide for the strength and endurance of the mother, which is her generations, the creation within her. That's our sacred obligation, and that's our great priesthood. They then followed this deer to a great mountain. It's not a great mountain, but it's a mountain. And they stood upon it and watched a great river that was flowing below it. And they watched a cloud form from the earth. And it rose into the sky and called out to them, "I see you." And the man replied, "Who sees me?" And lightning filled the sky and pulsated like a heartbeat and said, "I am who does this." And they were instructed that they were to travel the earth and to name all things, every plant, every animal, every river, stream, and this must have took a long time, because they did not have airplanes or trains or automobiles, so they were walking on the deer trails, following the great deer. And so when they got done, they returned to this great mountain, this place they had first met their Creator. They had had generations, because they lived a long time, and said, "I did it, we named everything." And the Creator spoke and said, "I made you too." And so the first man said, "I gave sound to all things, purpose to all things, kindness to all things. I am kindness. I am Midegah," which means kindness. And he called for his children to be middu, doers of kindness. And the first mother spoke, and she said, "I bear fruit, and my fruit covers the earth like the strawberry. So I am Ode Amin. I am the fruit of life, and from that the symbol of the heart came to the world, which came from the strawberry the fruit that covers the land, which she took for herself as representatory of her generations, Ode Amen. And these are sacred names to us, Midegah and Ode Amen. When I was in the lodge, 39 years old, about to turn 40, and I had to get named. You can get 4 names in your life. That they told me my name in front of about 70 people, and I refused to say it. I said, write it down. And even then I read it, and was like, you gotta be kidding me. So I am proud to have the name of Midday within my name. And perhaps it's a call to help us return to how they saw the earth and the world and the responsibility to it. So that's an example of a sacred history that we have in both oral and written form. And I'm now going to talk to you about the ancient methodologies which are currently used as well and are currently known, that's how we teach these things. But the whole purpose was for the knowledge that was required in the first government established within creation by the creator of that creation, which was the family. The family. And anybody who puts a system in place that breaks apart, divides, or shatters the family, or removes the rights and responsibilities of the family, is in a declaration of war on your family to replace your family with themselves. I'm trying to wake you up. And I'm going to say it again because it does matter. That it may be your body, but they say that only applies if you're committing murder and not if you're protecting your own life. Something to reflect upon deeply. So, one of the things we made was wampum belts. These recorded agreements that we made between peoples. We didn't use paper for agreements. We used paper to record history. And then we would rewrite it when it got old, but we knew that it was just something that had to be shared. Agreements, we needed them to endure, so we used what's called a wampum bead. And we would put them into shapes, and they could be thrown in the fire and pulled out, and they still exist. You could throw the Constitution in a fire, and nobody would ever know it was there. I think they've already done it. So this is called the Friendship Belt. This was from 1613. The Peace, Friendship, and Alliance Agreement, where we said that we can live here side by side with us. This is a sacred land of the first mother and father. And I do want to say before I move forward that location where the first mother and father's bodies were laid is within the Garden River Ojibwe Nation in a cave called Trap Rock. And on the top of that is the location where they spoke with their creator. And it's a sacred place that would almost look like a Stonehenge of stones laying on the ground. And how they got there, I don't know. I don't know how a crane could even get up there today. But being that you are the children of these people, that it's your right and responsibility to go there as well. And so over the next years, I will be taking anybody who wants to go. These are some other examples of the wampum belts. These are the actual literal ones. They're currently in the community of Ogegwanabik, Solomon Mawati. They're held by the Commanda family. And currently a grandson of William Commanda has them right now. And he is learning from them because they are also coming out to tell the story and remind the European grandchild that they have an accountability as well here with us. In the future, who knows? Maybe Martians come, right? And maybe for 400 years they'll tell you that you're Martians, and maybe someone will be keeping hidden away, a copy of the Constitution, and they'll go and remind the Martians that they're Americans, right? Even if there was one American left, I'm certain they'd be wrapped in the flag holding the Constitution saying it's all mine. Like Gollum from Lord of the Rings. Now, the keeper of these for a long time was Grand Chief William Commanda, and he taught these things all around the world, and he knew these times would come. And they were reminders that you don't have any excuse. Now we also have petroglyphs. These are ancient petroglyphs that are carved into rock. Now we would call these like libraries. So these were used to teach in permanent teaching locations. And again, these are libraries. And here's some examples from, these were given to me by Wendy Phillips from the Pipestone, Minnesota, and Petersboro. Now currently there are 9,000 petroglyphs that are recorded in Mississauga in the location that the scrolls are right now, just next to it, that have been protected and never seen by anybody at any time. And I have already extended an invitation for Brian Nettles to be initiated through our lodge to be able to go and work with elders on recording those into a written English language for release and use publicly. And he has accepted that. Now we also have pictographs. These are paintings on rocks. And these are kind of as you go. We traveled. We went to communities. Heck, you have Thanksgiving. You get in the car, you head down the road. You're going to go see. Well, when we wanted to do these things, before they had I'll see you next year. And you were traveling. And so that's what these are. These are traveling libraries. And you'll see the same ones spread across the land. And we know what they mean. Nobody has to translate for us, just nobody's ever asked. We also have birch bark scrolls. And these are the inner bark of the birch tree. The birch tree is amazing. And I'm just going to give you a little heads up. If you are ever in nature and you are ever hungry and no access to food, break the bark of the birch bark tree. And that first layer of soft bark that's behind it, gather it. You can cook it, you can boil it, you can eat it raw, and you will not die. It's all the sustenance that you need. But if you like variety, you can always go grab other things. Well, we'll just give you one for now. Birch tree. And if you want to leave a little note, use the bark to write a little message. I was here, please help me. Now on the right here is one of the scrolls that has a message we're going to talk about today. And this is just one of many. You know, when I went with Nick Gervais down to, I got to the point where they said it's time. And the head of the Wolf clan and the head of the Turtle families, Turtle clan and the Bald Eagle clan and the various other clans, and even the head chief of the Haudenosaunee Iroquois came, the one who does all the negotiations. They call him Hoyanas. He even came as well. And before we were leaving, they called me back to a room. Hey, look at this, and they had a whole stack of scrolls. Very fascinating. The last time I was there, about an hour before I left, they threw a little shock to me. I sat in a circle, and I had a little recording in the circle and talking about how this is going to take place, what's going to take place. They brought binders down, big black binders with document protectors and with scrolls and the translation into English, and there's about 3 books that are already written and ready for release. So there's going to be some big things coming that affirm everything you knew was true and that fill in the gap greatly about what's going on. And so again, at the very end, I'm going to give an address, and I expect you to write it down because everybody has the right to go as well. There's no secrets here. So we also had stones and bones. These are ancient method of teachings and scrolls, higher language symbology, using bones from bald eagles and golden eagles. And the stones are an ancient. They look like little teeth, but they're not. They're special stones. No one knows where they came from. They're only found in Ontario, Canada, in the heart of the Anishinaabe people. And they're used to tell a story in incremental steps. We're going to show you an example of that. And what's amazing is they will make the image of one of the scroll images, and they'll tell the story as they move things. They memorized this going to here, and now they can keep the order, and in the end it makes another image. And so like the turtle teaching of what the turtle symbol means is a 27 hours of you better sit and listen to it all. And we'll talk about that. So when things look simple, they're not. But you want to know how difficult it was for Joseph Smith trying to figure this out and understand what he's being told as he's looking at a symbol and being told paragraphs, trying to reconcile that with his English mind. I can understand how difficult and challenging that must have been, and the great faith that must have taken to deal with it, because he certainly could have walked away. We also have written language. And Indians didn't write anything, they don't have any written language. That's a lie. We have syllabic, it's a written phonetic language. We call that the lowest level of language. That you need a symbol for every sound. That's why they rejected English so fiercely. They thought it was like a spell language. Why do I have to have, what is going on here? This was not widely used, but it was used for simple things with children. An example here to prove that they knew is from 1841. Right there. Now I do want to give you an example for those who know. And those who don't know, you will know. And many of you have been carrying this Ojibwe language on you for quite some time. It's another name for our Creator. And it means a great spirit of protection upon you. Chime Sebabe. And I think that that is special. That there is a great spirit of protection upon you. Those who know. Now, did other people know about this? Yeah. This was something brought to my attention by Dr. Michael Schulman from Israel that they found in 2010, the Melchizedek Temple, or a temple that references the king of Salem, Melchizedek, which again, mi, chi, ji, dek, are Ojibwe sounds. It's an Ojibwe word, which means flowing righteousness. I think that's fascinating, considering they don't know where he came from. And yet, on the floor, in the city of David, in Israel, and this isn't like a conspiracy. It's on the floor of a temple in Jerusalem, in the city of David outside of Jerusalem. And this is the Ojibwe language, syllabic language right here, which means the path of calmness or the way of peace. Wow. And we say, Midegah we win, the path of the heart. That's the path of peace. And do you see anybody caring about this when we say it? The boot's still on the throat, don't talk. But it's the way it is, so you gotta learn to love it. So, we have a lot to offer, and all these things still exist, and the teachers still exist that know these things. We're just at the time for you to receive them, and I think you're ready. So on this scroll, that the rabbi shared a scroll, and it looked really small, and you probably go, wow, that's really small. They are really small. Wow. And they're really small. And the ones that are big, they're actually sewn together, and they make a big scroll. That's a really big story. And I'll explain why they're sewn together. Because each of the images on the left tell a story, and those on the right, a song from the receiver, the student. And so, for example, on this image you see here, in the upper left, I don't even know if you can see it really, but that's a turtle. Okay? That's a turtle. And that's the beginning of this story. This is a creation scroll from the beginning of authority. That symbol right there takes 27 hours to tell the story of that turtle symbol there and what it means. And you have to know that to be able to understand the next part of the story, which is you and me, the Ojibwe, the spirits. And you have to know.
Okay, So that is
Hey,
content.
are you going to talk about the Tesla we're giving away, or is that
Yeah.
for the future?
Yes. So this is real, okay? What I'm about to announce is real. It's kind of tongue-in-cheek. It's kind of a little bit being funny, but it's real, okay? So Zion Media is giving away a used 3-year-old or less Tesla Model 3, okay? You heard us right. We're giving away a Tesla Model 3 for any of our listeners that can connect us to one of the following people: John the Beloved, the Davidic servant, or any of the 3 Nephites. All right, I'm glad you laughed, Lance. We're sort of joking, but we're serious. Like, come on, like, if they're out there, we want to meet them. Part of us, creating Zion Media is, in preparation for the end times. And we know these guys are out there. We know these guys are coming, and we want to meet them. And
So, Trevor, what if somebody said, listen, I'm the Davidic servant?
Thinking right there.
that's what we're hoping for. That is exactly what we're hoping for, because we're going to have at least one podcast where we bring on people who claim to be the Davidic servant. And we've already been in contact with a couple of them. We have a girl Davidic servant. We've got 2 boy Davidic servants.
What qualifies the winning? They have to prove it somehow to us. We have to actually be convinced.
I have a paper. I've sent it to you, Lance. It's a significant paper. And if they can check all the boxes, I mean, listen, this goes down to they got to be born at a certain time period. They this is like they would have to check all the boxes, fulfill all the Isaiah prophecies in order for us to prove that they indeed are the Davidic servant.
Something tells me if they really are, they're not going to be motivated by money or a Tesla.
No, it's not. We're not giving it to the Davidic servant. We're giving it to the person that connects us.
This is going to be like friend.
Or one unique.
We're trying to convince them to betray their connection to.
No, they'll get permission. They will see the mission of Zion Media. They will connect us. And here's the deal. We don't even have to go public and announce who these people are. We can give this car away and say, hey, good news, everyone. We found the Davidic servant. We gave away the Tesla. So it's kind of a little bit of a joke, but at the same time, it's not a joke. Like, we'd be willing to give away a heck of a lot more than a Tesla Model 3 if you can connect us to one of these 3 people.
5 people.
The biggest part about this is it's not just checking the boxes. Like, we need to get a spiritual confirmation that
That's
this
true.
person is actually legit and true. So those are the contests. We're going to be rolling out promos. You'll see videos, $1,000 and a Tesla from Zion Media.